How you doing, folks? Well, today I'm going to be showing you how to change the wheel bearings on the front of this Mk2 Golf 1.6 driver, but the same procedure should apply to any Mk2 Golf. Subtle differences but nothing major. In order to do this job, aside from a selection of fairly basic hand tools, you're going to need access to a press, such as a hydraulic press or something along those lines, simply because the bearings have to be pressed in and out of this car. So what you can do in that instance is bring the hub to a local garage, and a lot of the time they'll just press it in or out for a small fee. In this instance I do have access to a press, so that's what I'll be doing, but otherwise, as I said, just bring the hub to a local garage. It'd probably cost you maybe €20 to get it done by them. So anyway, first thing we need to do is we need to jack up the car and put it on axle stands on both sides. Make sure not to put the axle stands on a suspension component, because you need to allow for movement in them. Next, we are going to take off the track rod end from the hub. So that involves undoing the nut on the bottom and then separating the ball joint from the hub. I have a ball joint splitter, which I find quite helpful, but some people like to use the method of just beating it with a hammer. Personally, I think that's a little bit of the unscientific method, especially if you actually have the ball joint splitter. So, what size are we looking at here? I think we're on 19. Okay, that's undone. Now, we're not going to be taking the track rod end off, but we will inspect the boot and make sure that that's serviceable. Next, we are going to undo the brake caliper from the carrier. First thing we need to do is we need to remove the there are two cap-headed bolts there and there, which are basically part of your sliding assembly for the caliper. So we will we'll remove them, and we're not going to be breaking the hydraulic pipe. What we'll do is we'll just actually hang the caliper up out of the way and leave it attached, so you don't need to worry about bleeding the hydraulic system afterwards or getting brake fluid all over the place. Okay, so what you need to remove these is a 6mm Allen key, and just make sure you tap it home, make sure you don't strip it out, and then just bite your top lip and give it hell. Now, you don't want to be going spraying WD-40 all over the place here, okay? These are brakes, don't forget. So, we're just going to have to persevere and take it slow. I have to give it a little wiggle just to get it the last of the way out, because it's kind of caught up. Now, while these are out, this is a good opportunity to re-lubricate your sliding pins and to inspect everything, including the discs and pads. So there's one of them out. So we need to get the one on the other side out, or on the top out now as well. There we go. So now I can tap the bolt out the rest of the way. That was annoying. Okay. I'll get a cable tie to cable tie that up out of the way, and then I'll get the bolt out afterwards. Just give it a little wiggle with a vice grips, it'll be out. There's the reason why it was so difficult to get out, is because the whole rubber piece came out along with it. So that would suggest that the bolt is actually stuck in the sleeve. So I'm going to have to do a job on that afterwards. I'll probably just grab it in the bench vise and just try and tap it out and see if I can dress it up a little bit. Okay, so now that the slider is off, we'll take the pads off. Now you can see the pads are actually in very good order on this car, so they were only replaced recently. And make sure you don't lose your anti-rattle clips as well. You'll know which shoe was the one that was on the inside, because you'll see the imprint of the piston in the caliper on it, so that'll be your indication, so you don't really need to go and label them. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is remove this hub nut. Now, it says in the Haynes manual you need to go and remove the drive shaft. This is how you remove the drive shaft. You don't need to go and undo the CV joints from the back of the stub shaft assembly. Suitable size socket in this instance is 30 millimeters. Next we're going to undo the lower ball joint. Actually what we'll do is we'll take out that Phillips screw and take the brake disc off first. It's just a single screw holding it in place, that's all. It wasn't especially tight or anything. So that's the brake disc off now. So that exposes the hub. So now what we can do is we can undo our lower ball joint. So there is a cross bolt in around the back here. So that's the head of the bolt, and there is the corresponding nut on the other side. So we will buzz the nut off with the impact gun. That's your pinch bolt with the nut taken off the lower ball joint. So now what we need to do is we need to get the wishbone off the hub. So sometimes what you need to do is you need to just separate out the kind of the pinch on the lower hub by just getting a drift and just spreading it out slightly, and then just tapping the wishbone down, and that should free it up. In this instance it actually just came off straight away. So let's get the top two nuts undone, and then I'm going in out of the rain and I'll tackle the other side later on. Okay, so these are 19mm. So use an open end spanner on this side and just buzz them out. Stitched, I think is the word I'd use here. Okay, that one's growing on us. We'll come back to it. Let's get the bottom one off. We'll get a bit of UB40 on that there and see if we can free it up. Okay, we'll just tighten that back up. We'll spray with WD first. Okay, so they're soaked in WD and I'm getting soaked in rain. Oh, they are tight. I mean, this is a decent impact gun in fairness. Get out. Oh, you didn't think it was going to beat me, did you? No. Throw that aside. And we do the other one. Well, that didn't put up as much of a fight, but it's still stitched in there. Okay. That nut is hot. Okay, so that's that allows us to remove our hub now. There we go. That's hub number one removed. Okay, so now I will remove the backing plate as well. It's just held on with two small nuts. But next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tackle the other side. an absolute pig that was. The bottom of the two bolts on the strut was just not wanting to come out. Anyway, I wasn't going to give up the fight that easily. Right, so now I have the two hubs off. Okay, just having a look at the wheel bearing now. Well, the hub with the wheel bearing still in. It's not sounding very happy. So that's our culprit. The one on the other side actually sounds alright, but you do these type of jobs in pairs. You don't just go and replace one and not replace the other. That would be just stupid. So I have a pair of wheel bearings to go in, and they will be going in. So first thing we need to do, we need to actually remove the, if you have a look on the back here, you'll see there is a circlip. So that circlip needs to be removed from in there, and then that will allow the hub carrier to come off and leave the hub with the bearing in place. So let's do that next. Okay, so some of you might be wondering why I'm doing this on my driveway when I have a garage. Well, the garage is being used for storage at the moment, so I actually don't have a garage, which is something of a frustration for me at the moment. Nevertheless, this job needs to be done. So, circlip pliers, stick it in the two holes, keep the chatter down the back. I hate circlips. I really hate circlips, you know that? The worst of them are those bloody circlips that don't actually have the hole in them to put the circlip pliers into. Luckily enough these ones do, but still a faff. Yeah, that's out. Okay, so there's your circlip. The new one comes with the kit anyway, so that's at least something anyway. So yeah, anyway. Okay, so I have the whole assembly set up on a press here now after taking the back circlip off. This press is older than Methuselah's cat, but it will do the job. And basically what I have is I have a bar going along here to support this side of this on two V-blocks, and then there's another V-block over here, and they're there just to space it out to keep everything even. And what we're going to do is we're going to push this inner race to push the hub on this side out. Okay, so we're pushing down here, and then what we'll do is we'll flip over. The bearing will still be stuck in this part here, so we flip that over and push the actual bearing itself out of the housing afterwards. Okay, so this is now the removed hub after I got showered with hydraulic oil from the bloody press. But anyway, we now have half the bearing out, and this is going to cause me a problem because this part here still needs to be removed from the hub. That's part of the inner race, so hassle ensues. Anyway, before we do anything else, we need to remove the other circlip from the hub. So there's actually a circlip on this side as well. This is the side that the hub was actually on, and you'll see that there's a circlip there too. So we need to remove that, and we need to drive the bearing, the outer race of the bearing, out of the bearing carrier or hub carrier. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the bearing out this direction, in the direction that the hole was in. I've got a couple of V-blocks underneath there, so I'm going to put a bit of pressure on that and see how we go. Well, I know it's not square, but what an absolute pig that was. So basically the intention is that you push the hub out first of all, support the whole hub carrier, push the hub out first of all, and then you push the bearing outer race out after the fact, and then you're left with unfortunately the inner race of the bearing stuck on the hub. So now there's several ways of getting that off. You could use heat, you could try and cut a notch in it, you could use a cold chisel, but in this instance you have at our disposal a lathe. And that is what we're going to be doing. We're going to put those hubs in the lathe, and we're going to machine them off, because that, my friends, is the scientific method. She was getting a bit hot there. Okay, obviously the bearing in a race is hardened steel, and it definitely put up a fight on the lathe. So what we'll do is we'll just try and drift it off with I'm using a cold chisel, and just want to get in between the hub and the bearing, and just try and drift it off as much as possible. And then what I'll do is I'll get a pullers and see if I can get it off the rest of the way. This is really a faff. To be honest with you folks, at this stage, just bring the hubs to a mechanic and get them to put the new bearings into them for you and refit them, because this is a pain in the face, big style. Okay, so the chisel was enough to get the inner race up enough just to put these bars underneath it on the V blocks, and hopefully it won't take too much force because it's not the most secure setup in the world, but it should just do the job. We'll give it a go and see what happens. Yeah, I meant to do that. It was just for comedic effect. Obviously, I had one hand on the camera and the other hand on the porta-power thing for the press. This press, as I said, is older than Methuselah's cat. So anyway, that's one done. So that's one hub out. I'll dress it up, get the other one done, and then we'll get to pressing the bearing in. This is taking far too long. Okay, so here are the two hub carriers all cleaned up and ready to go. So what we need to do first of all is put a little smear of grease inside the carrier around here, and then what we need to do is we need to put the circlip on the forward face here, because that's what's going to stop the bearing from going too far when you're pressing it in from the other side. So let's get that done. So here's what comes in the bearing kit that you get from Febi Bilstein, and obviously you have the bearing, you have two circlips, you have a new hub nut, you have two lock nuts, and the pinch bolt for the lower wishbone. So what we will do is, as I said, first of all we're going to pop our circlip into the fuck it. Okay, so apparently the bearings I need are 72mm bearings. Yeah. What the hell size did I get? Let's have a look. 66mm bearings. That's what I got. Well, whatever the hell they were, they're wrong. So now I need to change them. And of course, I bought them online. I didn't buy them in a local motor factors or anything, so I have to send them back. Oh, you can do without it. You really can. Anyway, right. We'll pick this up another day. Either way, it's bucketing rain out, so I'm not going to be going fitting them tonight. So, oh well. I'm always an advocate of supporting your local motor factors, because the one time you need them, and if you don't support them, they won't be there anymore. So I went down to the local motor factors and I picked up two bearings. Was able to measure them there on the bench in the shop, make sure they were the right ones, and the ones I bought online I can return at a later stage. So at least we're back in action. So let's have a look and see what we're dealing with here. Okay, so here's the kit we have here now. So this is the correct size bearing. I did offer it up and make sure before we continue. And it actually comes with new nuts for the bolts that go through the strut as well. There's our new hub nut and nut for the pinch bolt that holds the hub onto the lower wishbone ball joint, and this is the nut for the track rod end. So we also have a pair of circlips. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a circlip in this side here first of all. So this is the side that the hub will be on, because we're actually going to push the bearing in from the other side. So let's pop our circlip in here first of all. So this is where I go and flick the circlip across the workshop. Oh no, it went in straight away. I must have done something wrong. Okay, right, so that's that. So next what we'll do is we'll flip this over. I've put a smear of grease in the inside of that there. Okay, so that's good to go. And we will now press the bearing home. And what we're going to do is we're going to press the outer race. Do not press the inner race when you're pushing the outside down home, because what will happen is you'll separate the bearing and you're going to have a bad time. So what I did was I actually kept the old bearing to use as a driver. So we're going to use that bearing to push the new bearing in, and then we'll be able to pull that out. It'll be a little bit stuck in the thing, but we'll wiggle it out. So let's get it set up in the press. Okay, so I have a flat plate on here to act on the outside race. I have this button to push on and the old bearing, so that's going to drive the new bearing down home, hopefully. There she goes. Okay, so that's now home. Alright, so we let the pressure off. The bearing is now pressed home. I was able to just kind of give that a bit of a wiggle and it came out. Just a few taps left and right with a hammer actually, and it brought it out. So that's done. So now we can put our circlip in this side. Okay, so now that we have the inner bearing installed in the hub carrier, we can now install it onto the hub. So the hub is now on the press, just on the top of a V block. And what we'll do is we'll lift this up, position it over it, and literally press it down while pressing only on the inner race. So you do not press on the outer race now. Obviously the circlip is going to be in the way. But what we'll do is we'll get a button and we'll press it down on the inner race. I'll get a suitable size button to do it there now in a second. Okay, so we're well set up here now. So you can see that the hub is just sitting on the bearing there, and we're going to drive the bearing carrier and bearing down onto the hub. So let's do that. Make sure you keep going until it's home. Now, we're up to 2 tons of force there on the gauge, so that will do the job nicely. Okay, so they're both done now and ready to refit onto the car, so let's get stuck in and do that. Okay, so we are now ready to refit the hub. So what I've done is I've greased up the splines on the drive shaft already, and what we will do now is we will slip the hub over the drive shaft and drop it down onto the lower ball joint here. Okay, that's fine. Doesn't matter if the shaft is wanting to pop out again, because we'll be putting a nut and washer on that now in a minute. What we'll do next is we'll put our pinch bolt in. So I've actually got a little box with all of the associated hardware we need in here, and I'll just put a little bit of grease on the bolt so that it comes free next time we have to do something with this, be it wheel bearings again or otherwise. I don't imagine we'll have to do wheel bearings for another 100,000 miles, but I just don't know sometimes. Go. It'll only go in once the slot in the lower ball joint is actually lined up. Okay, so that's hand tight now. We get our nut and washer on here. So the kit comes with a new nut, but we'll be using the old washer. So so that's going to keep that in place now. Next we can get our upper bolts installed. So I cleaned everything up on the wire wheel. So you'll see bolts are nice and clean there. Bring you guys in a bit closer to have a look. So there we are. In, and that's in. And again, new nuts, but we'll again just put a little bit of grease on the threads. And we'll be torquing everything up once it's all assembled. You don't need to go too mad on the grease on the threads, just a little bit just to aid assembly and removal at a later stage. Okay, so you can see now there's a little bit of, not a great deal of movement there, but there's a little bit, so try and line up the marks so that'll keep your steering geometry the same as it was before. Okay, so for the moment let's get our brake disc installed. Remember that there is a small screw that retains it. The kit comes with a new screw, but personally I think I'll just reuse the old one because it's a Phillips rather than a spline. Okay, so now we can install our brake disc. So line up the screw hole and pop it in. It's remarkable how much corrosion ended up on the disc in such a short space of time. I was only doing this yesterday and already, well, the day before yesterday, and already the front of the disc was fairly rusty, so I just got a wire wheel just to remove any of the surface corrosion. It is only surface corrosion, but it's worth removing nonetheless. So next I'll actually tighten up that screw now. Okay. Don't need to use an impact screwdriver to do this, just fully tight, but don't forget, it's only just to retain the disc. That disc is not going anywhere when the wheel is bolted on. The hub will, the wheel bolts into the hub, not the disc, so it's really just a retaining screw. So next what we can do is we can start putting our brake caliper on. So the brake caliper, if you remember correctly, is hung up here, and I had great fun actually removing the slider from the bolt that holds it on. So that's going to just break free. I won't pull any harder than that. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to put a little bit of copper grease, not normal grease, now copper grease, just on the V-grooves in this end here and this end here of the pads. So we'll do that next. Okay, so funnily enough, the inside and outside shoes are actually different on this car. So you see this one is actually a slightly different shape, and it has the imprint of the piston on the back, so that's the way you notice the inside one. I did mention that earlier on. So bit of copper grease again, pop it in there, the right way around of course. Just literally goes onto the sliders on the hub, which I did clean up. I gave it a very light sandblasting. I didn't go mad on it because I didn't want to remove too much material in an effort to have something looking nice. It's actually not really all that visible. Really doesn't make much sense to me. Okay, so once you have the shoes in, then you can install your anti-rattle clips. So they kind of go, you put it in behind the back shoe first of all. I'll show you a little bit closer here now. So just slide it in behind the back, the inside shoe first of all, and then there's a little hook that goes underneath there, and then you can pop in your shoe on the other side, and you do the same on the bottom. So now they're in, you can put your caliper on. The caliper literally just slips on over. You might need to push the piston back if you're unlucky. Kind of just hooks underneath and goes on like that. Now you will need to put some copper grease on the bolts before you put them in, okay? In this instance, I actually have to put the slider back in as well too, so this slider actually needs to go in first, which normally wouldn't be removed, but in the instance of this it was actually seized onto the bolt, so it did have to come out, and I had to clean it up. Ideally, in an ideal world obviously, you'd replace it, but ain't nobody got time for that. You can see there's a long and a short bolt. The long bolt goes in the top, the short bolt goes in the bottom. Bit of grease. Just make very sure before you put these bolts in that you put some copper grease on them, because they will get stuck on you if you don't. Give the caliper a little wiggle, get your bolts lined up, and then tighten them up. And then we'll start tightening everything else here, and then we can put our track rod end on. Just fully tight on these will do fine. Okay, so they're not coming loose. Right, so that's our brake caliper on. Top and bottom mounts for the hub. And what we'll do is we'll tighten them up now, and then we can get our track rod end installed. Okay, we'll just wind them up with the impact gun first of all, and then we will torque them up afterwards. Okay, so that's installed on the top. As I said, we will revisit that. And the bottom now is if you remember, just a pinch bolt down below, and that needs to be done up to 17mm. So these were 19, the bottom one is 17. Okay, so I have a 17mm ratchet on one end and my socket on the other end. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is not coming off, but we will torque it as well. Next I want to do up that hub nut. So that's a 30mm socket. Okay. That's going to get a torque as well. And finally, the track rod end can go in. And again, the kit comes with a new lock nut. So sometimes you just have to press the ball joint down just to stop it from spinning freely inside. So everything is installed now, but what we need to do is torque everything up, so I'll get the torque values now. Okay, so the last thing we can do now is install the wheel, and we will drop it down onto the ground on this side, and we can torque up the we can tighten up that hub nut, because you're not going to be able to torque that up with the car still on an axle stand, simply because it's just going to turn on you the whole time. So I'll pull it up to 200 Newton meters, which is what my torque wrench goes to, and then I'll give it a little bit more, and then we should feel relatively safe then. Torque setting for the wheels is 110 Newton meters. So one of the things people often do is over torque the wheel bolts. We have our hub nuts torqued, we have our caliper bolts in, greased, top bolt, bottom cross bolt. Yeah, I think we're pretty much good. All we have to do is just tidy up the tools and throw the wheel trims back on. Okay, so that was definitely a 4-spanner raging job, only because of the fact that the bearings definitely put up a fight when I was trying to remove them. Other than that, it was pretty straightforward. Removing the hubs and reinstalling them was pretty easy, but you just have to be careful. And the other thing as well too is that you need to make sure that you get the right bearings, because apparently there are 3 different types for this car. So it'd be, if it was at all possible, if you could measure the outer race of the bearing before you kind of proceed any further, or find somewhere that has all 3 sets in stock, but you know, that's not necessarily practical. Anyway, yeah, my personal recommendation is to bring the hubs to a garage, get them to press the bearings in, press the old bearings out and press the new bearings in. If I was doing the job myself, I'd definitely go down that route. If I was doing it again, obviously. So yeah, anyway, let's take it out for a spin and see how it goes. I suppose the joy of doing these type of jobs in the winter is that you have to contend with the darkness. It's only 6 p.m. But yeah, Ireland for you. Anyway, first thing we should do really is just pump the brake pedal a couple of times, make sure that the brakes are all right, because you did disturb them, don't forget, you know, when doing this job, so it makes good sense. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to reverse gingerly off the driveway once I can actually see where I'm going. Fortunately, one of the jobs I have to do in this car is to find a leak. The boot is always wet in it, and I believe it's the rear lights, but it's just another thing on the list of jobs to be rectified in this car. So everything feels alright anyway. I would strongly recommend getting the steering geometry checked after doing a job like this as well, especially if it hasn't been checked in a long time or you feel that you didn't get everything back the way it was before. So it is worth bearing in mind. So yeah, I know you can't really see me that well, but believe me, I'm here, and I can tell you now the car is driving really well. It's much quieter. Those wheel bearings were absolutely wrecking my head, so yeah, we'll call this a job well done. As I said, the way I'd go about it, unless you have a press at your disposal, just bring the hubs into a garage and have them do it. I mean, it shouldn't cost you much more than maybe €20. That's a kind of a guesstimate on my part, but you know, I don't see why you should need to pay that much more than that, in addition to the cost of the bearings. Now, just before I go, the one other thing I was going to suggest was the fact that you buy the bearings in your local motor factors. Support your local motor factors, folks. I know it's easy sometimes to buy stuff online, but you know, a lot of them are small businesses where there's families dependent on the income, and I'm a firm believer in supporting local business, and motor factors are one of those local businesses. If there is one or two close by, take a spin down to them, get the bits there instead of doing the convenient thing and buying them online. And plus, it's the added advantage for you is the fact that you can actually, if you ever have a problem with them, you have a simple way of rectifying that problem. You know, bring the part back down the road to your motor factors. You know, if it's a decent motor factors, they'll put everything right for you. As Swords Motor Factors did for me today. I ordered the part yesterday after finding out I had the wrong bearings. As soon as I was finished making the video, I picked up the phone to them, rang them. They said, oh yeah, we can have the wheel bearings in stock for you tomorrow morning. And I said, well, will you just make sure that the 72mm outside diameter bearings? And they said, yes, absolutely, we'll check that for you, which they did, and they got the right bearings in. Happy days. So anyway, look, thanks for watching, folks, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you in a future video. And please do subscribe. You're helping support my channel. Talk to you soon.